there. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Wednesday's programme with me, Anne Davis. And first tonight, Nottingham City Council has declared itself effectively bankrupt, meaning it has to stop all new spending other than for services that it must provide by law. A recent report said that the Labour-run council was set for a £23 million overspend in this financial year. Well, it's been beset by financial issues in recent years and was already being monitored by the government. Now, in a moment, I'll be talking to the council leader, David Mellen. But first, here's our political reporter, Hugh Caswell.
It's a dark day for Nottingham City Council. The authority's financial problems have made headlines for years, but it's all been leading to this. Issuing a Section 114 notice means the council is formally declaring it can't set a balanced budget. That's something all councils have to do by law. Now, there are some services which should be protected, things like social care and waste collection, but pretty much everything else, those so-called discretionary services, will have to be looked at and potentially cut. So how did we end up here? Well, what's common for councils everywhere is the impact of inflation, plus the rising demand and spiralling costs of some of its services that are already the most expensive, things like social care for both children and adults. But that's far from the whole story. The council has also seen cuts in its funding from central government. What's called the Revenue Support Grant is around £100 million per year less now than it was a decade or so ago. But something that sets Nottingham apart is some of the high-profile mistakes the council has made. Things like the collapse of Robin Hood Energy and the unlawful spending of money that should have gone on council housing, they each cost tens of millions of pounds. They've also meant the council has been under the watchful eye of government inspectors for some time, but tonight ministers have confirmed they are considering further action. In a statement, they say they've expressed concern over the lack of urgency demonstrated by the council in addressing these challenges and have made it clear the onus is on the council to deliver the necessary improvements. Anytime the council's financial problems come up, you tend to get into this back and forth row with Labour pointing towards those funding cuts, Conservatives and others pointing towards Labour's mistakes. Then yes, you have things like inflation and service demand playing their part too. So just consider, all of those things can be true at once. What's happening here in Nottingham might just be a perfect storm. Hugh Caswell, BBC East Midlands Today in Nottingham.
Well, David Mellen is leader of the City Council. Thank you so much for coming in this evening, on not a great evening for you. On a practical level, though, what does this Section 114 notice going to mean for council taxpayers? What are they going to notice?
Well, I think it's important to reassure people that if you're employed by the City Council, we will continue to pay your wages. If you receive a package like care package in your home, people will still come and care for you. If you've done some services from the City Council and we owe you money, we will pay those bills. So there won't be an immediate effect for everybody, but we'll certainly be able to look at all of our spend that isn't statutory and have to stop some of that or delay some of that. And there will be a very stringent permission to spend process that will be led by our senior finance officer.
I know you're not allowed now to have any extra people. You're not allowed to recruit anyone. And I understand that there are quite a lot of job vacancies already at the council. How are your staff going to cope?
Well, that's a challenge for people. There's a number of people in the council who are doing several people's jobs. But it means that we have to be very realistic and say that there are some things that we can no longer do in the same way that we once did. And that's the reality of the situation.
When you say lots of sort of things, what sort of things are we talking about?
Well, if we look at our communications department, we've got a lot of vacancies there. If we look at our IT department, we've got a lot of vacancies there. It might be that people's problems with their computer takes a longer time to sort out, and that probably is not very efficient, but we haven't got the people in the same way, and we need to treat the staff that we have got with respect and with dignity.
And the government say they're scrutinising you quite closely, and they've said there was a concern about the lack of urgency. I mean, do you think you could actually be taken over now?
Well, that's always something that the government have threatened, but the reality is that the overspend that we have is directly due to the government not sorting out the problems in adult social care, not sorting out the problems in children's social care, and for actually there to be an increase in people who are presenting as homeless because of the cost of living crisis.
Nevertheless, though, as Hugh said in his report, there have been some fairly hefty, high-profile mistakes, financial mistakes made by the council.
Yes,
over the
and
years.
I've talked about that on this sofa before, and apologise for that. But those are dwarfed by the cuts that we've had to our government, our budgets. £100 million every year for the last 10 years, compared with, yes, some very serious mistakes that were made in the past. But they are small compared with the money that has been cut from Nottingham City Council by this Conservative government, who haven't taken their responsibility seriously.
You say that, you reckon you're not the only ones, that other councils may have to do the same thing. Do you think that's going to happen?
I think it's quite likely. We're not the first and we won't be the last, I think, unless the government, in what they do before Christmas, which is give the local government their settlement, respond to the needs that many people are calling out for us to be funded properly.
Just very quickly, yes or no, really, will you stay?
Well, I've been seeking to sort out the problems in Nottingham City. This is not really about my job today, it's about the jobs of the people who are still going to be paid at the City Council.
OK. Well, Councillor Mellen, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to come in and speak to us.
Thank you.
Next tonight, more troubling news about the safety of